VSiN Weekend Morning Line on VSiN, the sports betting network.
We are off and running on a Saturday morning. Hello, everyone. I am Tim Murray, live from the Circus Sportsbook in downtown Las Vegas, Nevada. We got a busy Saturday ahead. We've got 4 games on the NBA playoff docket. We've got 4 games for the Stanley Cup playoffs, and we will wrap up the NFL draft. Rounds 4 through 7 will start at noon Eastern today. Busy show ahead for you. A lot of analysis of what we've seen so far in the NFL draft, what hauls we like, maybe look at the offensive and defensive rookie of the year odds, what happened last night in the NBA and on the ice. And usually we start the show by setting the scene for today, and we will get to that here in just a matter of moments. But we also like to take a look back at what unfolded last night, or what didn't unfold last night, as we saw picks from 33 to 102 last night in the NFL draft, and we did not hear the name Shedeur Sanders, as he is still on the board as we head into the 3rd day of the NFL draft. And I'm still young enough to remember when me, Matt Brown, and Matt Humans were on the airwaves at 7 o'clock Eastern, considering and contemplating, all right, where could Shedeur Sanders ultimately go tonight during our NFL draft coverage of the first round? And all the reports that were coming out seemed to indicate it could be 21. Maybe a team trades in to get Shedeur Sanders. And as we got closer and closer to the draft, on Thursday, mind you, it felt like, all right, he may drop out of the first round. And after Pittsburgh decided to go Derek Harmon, defensive tackle out of Oregon, with the 21st overall pick, that was when you started to think, yeah, he might be waiting around until day number 2. And I went out there, I was sitting with Matt Brown, who he and I were going head-to-head on a bet over-under 2.5 quarterbacks. I had the under, he had the over. Jackson Dart ultimately gets selected by the New York Giants at 25. And now the sweat was on for me. All right, is any team going to trade in? A trade pops up. I'm like, oh, God, who is it going to be? Who's coming in to get Shedeur Sanders? Remember, Thursday night. But it was the Philadelphia Eagles moving up 1 pick to get Jahad Campbell. Okay, here we go. On to day number 2. I threw in another little bet. So I had added a bet at plus 650 prior to the draft unfolding of Shedeur Sanders to land with the Pittsburgh Steelers. Got great CLV on that one. And then prior to the draft coming back out, I threw in a little something on Las Vegas to select Shedeur Sanders. And as the day went on, and as you started to hear the reporting, I was pretty confident it wasn't going to be New Orleans. Everything you had read, it wasn't going to be New Orleans. Tyler Shuck goes 40th overall to New Orleans. And then as the 3rd round started to come around, and I'm sitting there and I'm like, is he really going to last to 83 for the Pittsburgh Steelers? Pick. Here it is. Pick number 83. And the Pittsburgh Steelers go with Iowa running back Caleb Johnson. Quick aside, I absolutely love that pick. We will discuss that further on in the show. But Caleb Johnson lasting to 83 was pretty wild to me. And the fact that the Pittsburgh Steelers, who of course lost Najee Harris in free agency to Los Angeles Chargers, they get with their only 2nd pick, because they traded for DK Metcalf this offseason, they get Iowa running back Caleb Johnson at 83. That's a hell of a selection at number 83. I think the wildest thing that unfolded last night to me was that at pick 94, the Cleveland Browns, who I had talked to a couple people in Cleveland, not in the front office, just media members, and everything they had heard at 33 and at 36, the indication was it wasn't going to be a quarterback. They were right. At 94, they went with Dylan Gabriel. Look, we are a betting network. I love working here at VSiN because we don't get into a lot of the kind of minutia that is out there a lot. I don't know why Shedeur Sanders is still out there. I think there's a lot that goes into it. I am pretty wildly surprised that here we are on Saturday, April 26th, before the fourth round, and we're talking about where Shedeur Sanders could go today. There are odds out there right now of who could select Shedeur Sanders. At this point, ladies and gentlemen, I mean, I guess I was throwing darts prior to the draft and on Friday, but at this point, who the hell knows? Fourth round picks are players who could come in and contribute, but at this point, I think you're kind of shrugging your shoulders. It could be Pittsburgh again. It could be Las Vegas, who has the sixth pick today. But it could be anyone else. It could be the Rams. Why not? It could be a team like the San Francisco 49ers. People have thrown out Dallas Cowboys, I guess. That wouldn't make a whole lot of sense. They went out and traded for Joe Milton this year, but it is wild. I don't know why he's still here. I don't know where he'll ultimately go. Hopefully, we'll be on the air when he is selected, because that would be a lot of fun. Remember, the draft starts again coming up at noon Eastern. Mike Sanford's going to join the show coming up at the bottom of the hour. And we'll get his thoughts, because he was in studio with us on VSiN Primetime a little under 2 weeks ago, and we talked about the quarterbacks in this draft class. And he raved about Shedeur Sanders. He lives in the Denver area. Remember, Mike was the coach prior to Coach Prime coming in. He had limited interactions, I believe, with the Sanders family, but he got to cover that football program, and he raved about Shedeur Sanders. So was it the interview process? Is it the lack of agent? I have no idea. But the fact that we've had 102 picks is pretty surprising, and now we will see what happens later on today. As for the betting aspect of Shedeur Sanders, today, Pittsburgh being the favorite at plus 190, the Raiders being at plus 350. I guess you could take a wild shot, maybe throw some darts out there. It's probably not going to be the Cleveland Browns at 30-1. I think that's safe to say after they went Dylan Gabriel at 94. Probably not going to be the Seattle Seahawks, who decided to draft Jalen Milroe last night. But it is going to be interesting to see how today ultimately unfolds. We'll set the scene for you coming up on the other side. If I had to make a wild prediction right now, I guess not wild at this point, I still think Pittsburgh, everything you heard, they do like Shedeur Sanders. I still think he could ultimately land there in Pittsburgh, but they have to wait, I think, about 18, 19 picks today. So we'll see how this ultimately comes together. But I do want to dive into the draft, some of my favorite hauls, some of the rookies that I think could make instant impacts. And once again, I'll circle back to this. At 83, the Pittsburgh Steelers passing on Shedeur for Caleb Johnson out of Iowa. I'm not saying I like them passing on Shedeur Sanders, but I love the pick of Caleb Johnson there at number 83 to the Pittsburgh Steelers. I think he at 30-1 to win Offensive Rookie of the Year is kind of interesting right now, because there's a good chance he's a day one starter there in Pittsburgh. All right. What also unfolded late last night was a hell of a finish between the Minnesota Timberwolves and the Los Angeles Lakers. LeBron James was kind of going vintage LeBron at moments in that fourth quarter, as he finished up with 38 points. Luka Doncic hits a floater in the lane, ties the game at 103. But Anthony Edwards, remember last year, thought, okay, here comes the next superstar. Moments last night showed you that, okay, this could be the dude. Jaden McDaniels, just a phenomenal performance yesterday for the Minnesota Timberwolves, dropping 30. And the Minnesota Timberwolves outscore the Lakers of the final 4.5 minutes, 13-1. They win 116-104. And now LeBron James and the Lakers, they're down 2-1 with game 4 in the Twin Cities coming up on Sunday. Here's LeBron last night.
We got to control the controllables, and I don't think we did that tonight. Obviously, 19 turnovers on the road is not going to be a good ingredient for winning. Giving up 30 points, off those turnovers. They had 20 plus points, in transition as well. So, we got to control the controllables, and if we do that, we give ourselves a good chance to win.
We talk about this all the time here at the network. The zigzag, right? The desperation spot. During the fall, this is a college football show, and we do the Murray's Delicatessen. I look at sandwich spots, situational angles. If you were a situational bettor last night, congratulations. Because last night, every team in the NHL and in the NBA who was down 0-2, guess what they did? They won. The Orlando Magic down 0-2 against the Boston Celtics. A banged up Boston team, but still a 5.5-point underdog in Orlando. The Magic win 95-93. The Milwaukee Bucks down early, and then we had the Gary Trent Jr. game. Things that have never been uttered before on this show. Milwaukee comes back. They win and cover as well. The Montreal Canadiens down 0-2 north of the border. We had a little fracas on the ice between the Canadiens and the Washington Capitals. Canadiens win that game. The Devils, double overtime winner. They get it done. The Edmonton Oilers down 0-2. Score 1 billion goals in the third period. They get it done. And I know you hate this, but I'm going to say it anyways. If you were out there and you said, desperation money line parlay, ladies and gentlemen, you put Orlando to Milwaukee to Montreal to New Jersey to Edmonton, paid you 34-1. Or if you just said it's a home team time of night, threw in Minnesota, would have been 55-1. The zigzag came home last night, but Shedeur Sanders has yet to find a home, and we'll see what happens as the day unfolds. Speaking of which, we'll get you set for today. We'll set the scene next. It is the VSiN Weekend Morning Line.
You're tuned in to the VSiN Weekend Morning Line.
Keep it rolling here on a Saturday morning live from the Circus Sportsbook in downtown Las Vegas. A busy Saturday. You know, the college basketball season wrapped up. You know, I'm a big college basketball guy. I was a little sad after the college football season, of course, came to a close. Also being the fact that Notre Dame got, I wouldn't say smoked, but, you know, did lose the national championship to Ohio State. But here we are, August 26th. We got 4 playoff games in the NBA, 4 games on the ice. We got the final 4 rounds of the NFL draft. It's going to be a great day. Got a lot of intrigue still regarding the NFL draft. I'm not a big conspiracy theory guy. I like to keep it pretty simple. I like to say this all the time. Not everything's black and white. There's a lot of gray areas. So we'll get into why we think it happened. But at the end of the day, it did happen. And as bettors, how can we react to the Shedeur Sanders fall? What does it mean from a betting standpoint? What can we do today to potentially make money on the Shedeur Sanders fall? That is the way I'm looking at it right now. 102 picks in. We've seen quarterbacks go. I would say the Dylan Gabriel selection was probably the most surprising to me at number 94, the Cleveland Browns, who I would say, and we'll dive into this in the second hour of the show, kind of liked what the Cleveland Browns did. Trading out at number 2, getting some additional draft capital, and some of the pieces they added to that roster I thought were pretty intriguing. Mason Graham being there with the 5th overall pick. We'll dive into the NFL draft. We'll get some thoughts. Mike Sanford going to join the program coming up at the bottom of the hour. Mike joined us all throughout the college football season. Lives in the Denver area, so I'm sure there's plenty of people thinking about what is going on with Shedeur Sanders or where he could ultimately go. Marc Malusis will help us break it down. The Moose, who was also filling in for me last week, so we appreciate that. We'll get his thoughts from the Giants' perspective. I'll say this too. Maybe I'm going to be too positive. I don't know. Kind of like what the Giants did. Abdul Carter at 3. Didn't do what they did in 2019, which was overdraft a quarterback. And then traded back in and got Jackson Dart at 25. We'll talk to JVT. Hour number 2, we'll get some NBA thoughts with him. Jonathan Davis will help us break down the 4 games on the ice today. Matt Humans on the NFL draft in the final hour of the program. And Chuck Esposito, our weekly check-in from behind the counter. So that's what you have in store for today from a guest standpoint here on the VSiN Weekend Morning Line. But let's get you ready for what to anticipate today from a betting standpoint, let's set the scene.
Let's dive into the biggest games of the day.
Well, the biggest story of the day, of course, will involve the NFL draft. Shedeur Sanders. Maybe you're a conspiracy theorist and said, hey, they made a call and said, we need the ratings to be better. No one picked Shedeur until day number 3. Of course, that didn't happen, but crazier things have been said. The Shedeur slide, when will it end? To me, is the number one story of the day, and we discussed it briefly. I'll revisit it here. If you look at DraftKings as for who could ultimately select Shedeur Sanders, I've got 2 live bets. Going into the draft, I took a flyer on the Pittsburgh Steelers at plus 650, and I want to say on draft day, that became the odds-on favorite to come home. And now the Steelers are still the favorite, but at this point, you got to just shoulder shrug and say, I don't know. I don't know where he's going to ultimately land. I can't recommend a bet unless you're just throwing darts at the board there, and no pun intended with Jackson Dart already being off the board with the New York Giants. But the odds right now at DraftKings, Steelers plus 190, Raiders plus 350, Jets and Rams plus 650, Cowboys plus 650 as well. As we look at, the draft order today and who is up early, you will see the Las Vegas Raiders picking with the 6th overall pick here today. Could that be the spot? Maybe. But I thought when they came up on the clock yesterday at 98 and 99, and my mind started going, all right, Tom Brady, pick 199, maybe at 99, he selects Shedeur Sanders, and instead they picked the tackle out of William and Mary. Shouts to the tribe for getting a draft pick there. So who knows? The Pittsburgh Steelers, by the way, on the clock at pick 123. So maybe it's the Pittsburgh Steelers. I still think if I had to guess, and that's what we're all doing, it would be the Pittsburgh Steelers in the 4th round, because Mike Tomlin, from all accounts, and he does not mince words, likes Shedeur Sanders. But it also could be the Raiders. We'll see. For personal purposes, outside of just my 2 bets that I have, both the Raiders and the Steelers to select Shedeur Sanders, I hope he gets picked by the Raiders with the 6th overall pick of the 4th round, because it'll probably happen on the air, and we could discuss it later on today. 3rd round starts noon Eastern today. On the clock right now, the Tennessee Titans with pick 103. Jimmy's down. Also something to keep an eye on today. Had to throw in a little Seinfeld reference. The old Jimmy, work it left. Jimmy, work it right. Will we see Jimmy Butler tonight for the Golden State Warriors, as the Warriors right now in a 1-1 series tie with the Houston Rockets? 8:30 Eastern tip time is this one. The Golden State Warriors at home find themselves a 3-point favorite, but Jimmy Butler dealing with an injury. Here's his head coach, Steve Kerr. All right, we will.
Anything.
There we go.
So we'll see. I mean, this is a day-to-day thing for sure, and we'll see how he feels tomorrow. But I think there's a chance he plays.
Do you have to, knowing that, do you have to make 2 game plans, rotations, as you're not sure?
Yeah, not 2 game plans, but 2 rotations for sure. The game plan doesn't change.
All right. I don't think he plays. That's just a guess for me. This is what the Warriors put out yesterday. He underwent an MRI, Jimmy Butler did, with that pelvis contusion. MRI of the injury. He is questionable for today. The Warriors, a 3-point favorite against the Houston Rockets, dropping game number 2 in H-Town. We'll talk to JVT in hour number 2 to get his thoughts on the nightcap of the quadruple header of NBA action we have today. That game 8:30 Eastern. And then we've got a Jawless situation in Oklahoma City. So Jawless in OKC, as Ja Morant will not play. And after you squander a 29-point lead, probably season's over. FedEx Forum this afternoon. I would be rather floored, and once again, Point Bread would tell you so. So that the 15-point underdog Memphis Grizzlies, who blew a 29-point lead to the Oklahoma City Thunder, get a win today. So I think the season is done for the Memphis Grizzlies, and kind of a weird way to end the year, no doubt, for the Memphis Grizzlies in this regard, where they get into the postseason, they lose the first play-in game, they win the second impressively. They fired their coach, of course, a couple weeks prior to the end of the season, regular season that is. And now here they are. They're going to get swept. And they also don't get their first-round pick because of the Marcus Smart trade. So they shipped out Marcus Smart to Washington, attached a first-round pick for salary cap reasons, and now they're more than likely not going to... Well, they don't have that pick because it is not going to be a lottery pick. Jokers are wild. We'll see if the Denver Nuggets can bounce back after getting absolutely curb-stomped by the Los Angeles Clippers. That game will take place at the Intuit Dome coming up at 6 o'clock Eastern. I know JVT, as he gets another reference, is pretty fired up about what he saw from his beloved Los Angeles Clippers in that spot. But I have a Clippers ticket to win this series, and I was thoroughly impressed. And now you start to get the gears going here. Do the Clippers potentially give the Oklahoma City Thunder a run for their money? Going back to the Thunder situation, another reason why get it done today, you get that extended rest, because Denver, not ready to count them out just yet, but right now the Clippers a 6.5-point favorite. And then on the ice today, ladies and gentlemen, 4 more games on the ice. It starts at 1 o'clock Eastern. We've got Tampa Bay at Florida, with Florida up 2-0 in that series. So do we see Florida, who went on the road and took games 1 and 2, take care of business? We've got Vegas at Minnesota, with the Wild now up 2-1. The Vegas Golden Knights, the favorite there. Toronto at Ottawa, and then the late night game, Dallas at Colorado. That one, oof. If you're a Colorado backer, like I have a little taste of the Colorado Avalanche, that is a frustrating series so far for Colorado Avalanche backers, as the Stars have a 2-1 series lead as they go to Colorado here tonight. Hey, folks, if you're looking for a new way to feel the rush of this Kentucky Derby, First Bet is your front row seat to the fastest 2 minutes in sports and so much more. Bet on the Derby and hundreds of other races every day. Firstbet.com, that's the number 1, stbet.com. New users, use the promo code VSiN200 to grab a $200 sign-up bonus. Mike Sanford, he'll join us next right here on VSiN.
You're tuned in to the VSiN Weekend Morning Line.
We keep it rolling here on a Saturday morning, live from the Circus Sportsbook in downtown Las Vegas. Man, fired up for today. I love today. 4 NBA playoff games, 4 playoff hockey games, and the conclusion of the NFL draft. And who would have thunk it that here we are, 103 picks into the NFL draft, and Shedeur Sanders, quarterback of the Colorado Buffaloes, still on the board. A gentleman who knows a thing or two about Shedeur Sanders, as well as all things going on in Denver, as it's a busy day up there in the Mile High City, as we wait for Shedeur Sanders, the Denver Nuggets down 2-1, the Colorado Avalanche down 2-1. Mike Sanford joins us right now, courtesy of our Progressive Guest Line, our coach here on the program. Man, who would have thunk it that we've got this situation brewing, and it all kind of comes to a head in your city? I'm sure you've had plenty to discuss on your radio program there in Denver. But look, you're familiar with Shedeur. Obviously, you guys were kind of 2 ships passing in the night at Colorado, but you've been in the media for the past couple of years. What do you make of this situation? And then we'll talk more about, Mike, what comes next. But just what's your thoughts on why this fall has ultimately happened to Shedeur Sanders?
Well, the number one thing is that Shedeur Sanders is somebody, in my eyes, that I love as a player. And I look at NFL quarterback play comes down to being able to move the sticks on third down with some of those advanced throws. I've seen that from Shedeur Sanders over the last 2 years at the University of Colorado. And frankly, I was fired by his dad, so I should be a little bit skeptical about the guy. But the other piece of it is he wins games when the game's in the balance with 2 minutes to go. And that's another aspect of NFL football. It seems like there's so much parity in the NFL, and it comes down to the last couple of minutes and who's going to execute at the quarterback position better. He's better than anybody in this draft. I can promise you he's better than Jalen Milroe in that space. I know he's better without question than Jackson Dart. Just go watch the dang Florida game and watch the Kentucky game and see how he performed down the stretch in those games. There's no justification for him not being drafted based off what's going on the field. Now, I do think this is a very, very weak quarterback class, and I feel that way about Cam Ward. I don't think he is a bona fide number one. In fact, I don't know that he would be in a redraft of the 2024 class. I don't know if he'd be in the top 6. I mean, can you make that argument that he's better than Bo Nix if you know what you know now? I would say no. So I think that Shedeur Sanders is sliding as a result of, I don't know that he necessarily wanted to play for some of the early round teams because of the nature versus nurture conversation and going into a bad environment, say the Browns, the Giants, those types of situations. So if you don't do well with those particular teams, you take a couple teams off the board that potentially could take you. And now, it's like if you wanted to, set your landing point or your destination, there aren't very many options. And I don't think that Shedeur Sanders is built for backup quarterback life in the National Football League. And I think that that's a big factor in this. Now, I think that whoever drafts Shedeur Sanders is going to have a franchise and a head coach that has major credibility. Somebody who has a lot of confidence and self-belief. In fact, I think it's going to come from either the Shanahan tree of coaches that all have the cool haircuts and they dress nice and they love the glitz and the glam, or I think it might come from Pete Carroll and the Las Vegas Raiders. But I just don't think an insecure head coach in a very insecure environment as it relates to their job would draft Shedeur Sanders. Why? Well, oh, by the way, your replacement, the fan base is going to want is your quarterback's father or your backup quarterback's father. So here we are in the 4th round, and it's going to be fascinating. ESPN is loving this right now.
Yeah.
I mean,
not Mel Kiper. Mel Kiper might spontaneous combust into his seat, man. He's losing his mind right now out there on the draft dais there. But we will see. It's funny, Mike. We were texting yesterday, and I thought, all right, who could it be? Could it be? I thought maybe the Raiders. I still think the Steelers obviously could be a landing spot. You talked about a coach that is confident. They've only had 2 picks. A quick aside here real quickly, because you and I love college football. You're now a high school football coach up there in Denver at Valor Christian. So you're going to be keeping an eye on all of these teams. When Pittsburgh came to the board at 83, I was like, all right, here's the spot.
Yep.
And then I actually really like the decision to take Caleb Johnson, the running back out of Iowa, because I think he's going to be awesome in Pittsburgh. I think he could potentially win Rookie of the Year. So maybe he still goes to Pittsburgh, but I understand the decision for Pittsburgh at 83 to bypass Shedeur Sanders, because to me, Mike, I think they addressed a really glaring need with a damn good running back.
Caleb Johnson, does he not just look like a Pittsburgh Steeler running back? He's the perfect wide zone one-cut back that you've seen. It's like a fresher Najee Harris, because Najee Harris looks to be a bit long in the tooth, and running backs wear their miles on him pretty quickly. That is a sneaky great pick. I'm really excited to see just how today plays out, because I think there are some very exciting picks that could be in that same conversation. And one that I will admit it has some local bias here, is I worked for the CSU Rams and did some of their stuff, broadcast 4 of their games this past season. And when Torrey Horton is fully healthy, that is a big time wide receiver. And he came off a surgical procedure in his lower body. I believe it was a knee. And he still went to the combine, still ran in the 4.4s at a guy that had tons of production, is 6'3" tall, and is around 200 pounds. So Torrey Horton's a very, very high value pick today, as well as tight end Gunnar Helm from the University of Texas. Also, ironically, a local product here. And then I'm anxious to see what happens with Cam Skattebo. Mm-hmm. Cam Skattebo is a player that just for one reason or another, is going to have some semblance of a run this year, where ESPN's leading their big story with everybody slept on this guy, and here he is leading the NFL in rushing this weekend. I just think that could happen. So day 3 is going to be fascinating TV. Like I said, ESPN's going to love the fact that they have major viewership on a day 3 of a draft. Last year it was all very top heavy. That first round was dynamic. And then after that, you're like, I think I'm going to watch the NBA and NHL playoffs.
Yeah, Cam Scatterbo, by the way, over-under at Circa was 120.5. So that is going to be one thing I'll keep an eye on there to see where the Arizona State running back ultimately goes. We're talking to Mike Sanford, our coach. He's now a head coach up there at Christian McCaffrey's alma mater, Valor Christian, and he's going to be hitting the field here soon enough there as the new head coach, but also a radio host as well. Up there on Altitude Sports Radio. All right, let's get to just some of the situations, and we'll start with Travis Hunter. So the Jacksonville Jaguars with Doogie Howser, GM there, the young buck in Gladstone, they make an aggressive move. And I said this, I actually liked it for both sides. I liked what Cleveland did. I've liked their haul so far moving back. But what do you make of this fit for the Jacksonville Jaguars? They wanted a splash at offense. We thought maybe it would be Genty, maybe it would be Tet McMillan. They said, no, we're going to go get Travis Hunter. So now you've got Travis Hunter down there with Trevor Lawrence. What do you expect to see from him in his rookie season?
I think it's going to be dynamic. It's going to be fireworks. You can tell that there's a franchise-wide decision to fully invest in all of the different attributes that Travis Hunter is going to bring to the football field for a franchise that frankly needs a little bit of fanfare, needs a little bit of connection to its local fan base. Why not draft a local product that grew up just 4 hours down the coast in West Palm Beach, Florida, and is the best player in this draft? There is no doubt about the most dynamic football player in this draft is Travis Hunter. In fact, I thought it was a massive mistake by the Tennessee Titans to bypass him at number one, even to get a quarterback, because I think he is that good of a player. He is going to be spoken about like Justin Jefferson on the offensive side of the ball, because I think the only person that has his level of ball skills in the National Football League at the receiver position is Justin Jefferson. And then on the defensive side of the ball, I believe he's going to be used sparingly in a dime and or nickel type package to come in and be a matchup problem for whoever is an elite slot receiver. Possibly if you have two outside receivers, like in a game, if you're playing against a Jamar Chase and a T. Higgins, that's a heavy game for Travis Hunter to play on the defensive side of the ball because of matchups. I think it's a tremendous pick. I think it's a franchise that knew what they wanted to do. There was agreement between general manager, head coach, and they're both new, so they can start this thing fresh with the right type of equation of how to utilize them. And I think it's going to be heavily on offense, because we all know that our guy that loves the old Duval, he loves to be able to throw the football down the field, and that's the perfect guy to do it.
All right, Mike, before we let you run, you got your Boise State helmet over your shoulder there. You're an alum of Boise State. You did some work for the Broncos as well with Bronco Nation News. Ashton Genty coming to my neck of the woods, Las Vegas. He's the betting favorite to win Rookie of the Year. 45 seconds on this fit.
45 seconds. I could go for 45 minutes on him. He's a player that I absolutely love. And it started a year ago in the 2023 season that saw head coach Andy Avalos, one of my former teammates, get fired because they weren't giving the ball to him. He was a backup. The guy was a backup in 2023 to George Halani, who now plays for the Seahawks. Ashton Genty is the ultimate workhorse. Think exact fit of Pete Carroll and what he did with Marshawn Lynch in beast mode. This is the fit. You're going to have a perfect representative of the franchise. You have a face of the franchise, which I don't think you've really had in Las Vegas. You know, Max Crosby, great player, but you need an offensive face of the franchise. You got it. And Ashton Genty will be the best rookie in this class in terms of production.
Check him out on Altitude Sports Radio, the head coach of Valor Christian High School up there in Denver, Mike Sanford. Always appreciate his insight. Just a reminder, folks, ProfitX is offering the best baseball odds all season long, and it's available in 40-plus states. Download ProfitX today and use the code VSiN to earn up to $200 in profit cash.
You're tuned in to the VSiN Weekend Morning Line.
We keep it rolling here on a Saturday morning live from the Circus Sportsbook in downtown Las Vegas. We got a whole lot to get to, a busy sports day. Of course, the sports story is that Shedeur Sanders still available and we will see where he ultimately is selected. The draft reconvenes at noon Eastern. The Tennessee Titans on the clock with pick 103. But we got 4 NBA games to get to, 4 NHL games to break down for you, and recap of course, what unfolded the first 2 nights of the NFL draft. And Marc Malusis, who's been doing work for us here at VSiN, which is awesome, but also you can hear him on WFAN as well as see him on PIX there in New York, joins us courtesy of our progressive guest line. And Marc, I'll start with this. I don't know what your thoughts were. We were having talks off the air regarding just industry stuff. So I am fresh to know your take on what the Giants did at 3. Side note, I loved it. I think Abdul Carter's an absolute monster. What did you make of the Giants' decision at 3 to go with Penn State edge rusher Abdul Carter?
Yeah, you know, my dad used to not say it to me, but used to basically have this mantra, KISS, right? Keep it simple, stupid. And I don't think, I mean, the Giants, I think with that 3rd overall pick, arguably might have gotten the best player in the draft, like the cleanest prospect in the draft in Abdul Carter, right? So if you take positions out of the equation, I think the Giants looked at it, and based on the history, right? They didn't necessarily reach for a quarterback a year ago when they had Daniel Jones coming off an injury, but they had, Daniel Jones still in the fold and they went with Malik Neighbors at LSU, right? Passed on guys like J.J. McCarthy and Michael Penix, and, people are up in arms. So I think the Giants went through the draft process, did all their homework on each and every one of these quarterbacks. I think they love Cam Ward. They couldn't get him. Yep. The Tennessee Titans were moving off the number 1 overall pick. But that's the quarterback they loved. He was the best quarterback in this draft class. If they were able to move up to 1, they would have drafted Cam Ward, but they weren't able to do it. So sitting there at 3, I really think it came down to a scenario, whatever happened at 2, they were going to take the next player. So if somebody moved up, and the Jaguars did, but they ended up taking Travis Hunter out of Colorado, the Giants take Abdul Carter. If somebody moved up and took Abdul Carter at 2, I think the Giants would have taken Travis Hunter out of Colorado. And they're in that position of taking great players. And those 2 players were the best 2 players in this draft, and they ended up with one of them. And now the Giants defense has got a big time identity. When you pair up Carter with Burns, Thibodeau, Dexter Lawrence, you throw in the additions they had in the offseason to the defensive secondary, whether it be Holland from Miami, Adebo, the big corner who's often injured from the New Orleans Saints, but when he's healthy, he's really productive. Now Shane Bowen, year 2 as defensive coordinator, this front 7 could give this Giants team a big time identity in 2025.
Yeah, there's no doubt. And, Darius Alexander, I thought was a nice pickup. We'll see what he does from a production standpoint, the tackle out of Toledo there. So they go defense with their 1st and 3rd round pick, but then of course they trade back in Moose with Jackson Dart. And as the win started to kind of come together on Thursday morning, it seemed, based off of the betting odds, this was the guy that they wanted, Jackson Dart, and they went out and they got him, trading in with Houston at 25, and they select Jackson Dart. From everything you've gathered over the past 24 plus hours here, there's Russell Wilson, there's Jameis Winston. Is this a full-on redshirt situation with Jackson Dart? What's your expectation for Dart in New York?
Yeah, I think Dave said it the other day, Tim, when they were talking about the pick, and after they moved up to get Dart out of Ole Miss, is that, ended all the conjecture, speculation. Russell Wilson is the starting quarterback for the New York Giants, week 1. Could that change as the season goes along? Yeah, I mean, because if you look at it on paper right now, the Giants are the 4th best team in the NFC East, right? The Eagles are defending Super Bowl champs. You've got Washington with Jane Daniels. You expect the Dallas Cowboys to be healthier. So could that change as the season goes along if Wilson isn't successful and they feel Dart is ready? There's no rush to start Jackson Dart week 1. That's the scenario. Here's what, talking to people within the building after the selection of Dart, what Dable loved him. The throws under pressure. He was the best quarterback with throws under pressure outside of, their infatuation for Cam Ward, right? Jackson Dart was number 2 on their draft board. They like his competitive nature. They like the fact that he's got a little bit of moxie to him. They think he's really coachable. He nailed the pre-draft process throughout the course of the spring after the college football season came to an end. They like the fact of his accuracy on the 1st and 2nd level. They understand the deep ball's got a little bit of work to do, and they know that he needs a little bit of an adjustment when it comes to working a pro-style offense. That's why I don't know if it's a true redshirt year. If the Giants are winning games with Russell Wilson, it'll be a true redshirt year. There's no rush. Daboll's the quarterback whisperer, and if he is, he got the guy that he wants to be able to mold and mend, and they believe that he's got the intangibles and he's got the physical attributes that they're looking for in a starting quarterback in the National Football League and their future franchise quarterback.
Marc Malusis is joining us here, courtesy of our Progressive Guest Line. Catch him on WFAN, PIX TV there in New York, and also from time to time here on VSiN as well. Flipping over to the other locker room there in New Jersey, the Jets go with Armand Membo at 7. We've got a new era there with Aaron Glenn. There was thoughts going in. He's going to want a defensive guy. Maybe it's Jihad Barron. I didn't ever buy really into that. But, once again, you said KISS, keep it simple, stupid. It feels like the way the board fell is like, all right, we're going to get arguably the best offensive lineman in this class at 7. Let's just go that way. So nothing too flashy, but what have you made of what the Jets have done so far here in the draft?
Yeah, I like it, Tim. I mean, I look at the scenario and I say the Jets have had an issue running the football. Their offensive line a year ago, whether it be injuries or whether it be poor play, was terrible, right? They couldn't block for Aaron Rodgers, and they were probably the worst rush attack offensive line in the National Football League. So, they addressed the left tackle position last year in the NFL draft, and they love their kid out of Penn State and Fashanu. Now, when you add Armand Membu out of Missouri, they believe he's a plug-and-play right tackle. They think that he's got an attitude. If you listen, I think it was really kind of Aaron Glenn's pick more than Darren Muji. When you look at their number 1 overall pick, they want to win in the trenches. They want to win up front. They're going to be extremely well coached. The Jets were poorly coached under head coach Robert Saleh and then interim head coach Jeff Ulbrich. So I think Glenn learned from guys like Bill Parcells and obviously Dan Campbell, Al Groh, from his experience as a player, a scout, area scout, national scout, defensive coordinator, now head coach of the Jets, gets it. Wants to kind of build this team up front, right? And knows that he needs his quarterback. We'll see what Fields ends up being, but not surprised that they went with Membu. Not surprised that they passed on Tyler Warren. And I thought maybe potentially if they fell in love with an edge rusher, they could have gone that route. But love the fact of what they did, especially with their 2 picks. You throw in Mason Taylor, the tight end out of LSU. They were looking for a playmaking tight end. They addressed the cornerback spot with, drafting the Florida State kid in the 3rd round. I like where this Jet team is going, but with their with the 7th overall pick, the offensive line was key. They believe they have their bookend left tackles for the next 10 to 12 years.
We were on the air on Thursday night watching the draft, focusing on that, and we had TVs, in the top corner, keeping an eye on what the Knicks were doing, and every time we looked up, it was kind of a back and forth, like, oh my God, what's happening here? So the Knicks pull it out as a 1.5-point favorite, Mark, on Thursday night, 118-116. Tomorrow, they're a 2-point dog at Detroit. They lead this series 2-1. It was funny. I talked about it to open the show. It was kind of that zigzag revenge, right? All the teams down 0-2 yesterday won in both the NHL and the NBA. And if you want to throw in the Timberwolves as well at home, getting that Game 3 victory. So the Knicks were able to grab Game 3. What do you expect tomorrow in Detroit with the Knicks being a slight 2-point dog against this Detroit squad?
Yeah, I think the Pistons are going to bounce back, to that zigzag theory. I would not be surprised. Listen, Detroit plays with no fear. Here's the one thing you look at the Pistons. Number one, the 2 games they've lost in this series, they allowed a 21-0 run 4th quarter in Game 1. In Game 3, they allowed a 21-3 run in the 2nd quarter, which allowed the Knicks to have, a 13-point lead at the half. They're going to be better on the glass. The Knicks were able to, they weren't minus 14 like they were in Game 2. I think Detroit was +4 in Game 3. The Knicks did a better job facilitating, getting everyone involved. Karl Anthony Towns, you looked at it, 4 players with 20 or more points in the game. That was an issue. But this Pistons team had success against the Knicks in the regular season. They won 3 of 4. I like the Knicks in 6 games, Tim, before. I don't think they're losing this series. And I never got a sense in the 4th quarter, even though it got a little weird late, and the Knicks were ever going to lose that game on Thursday night. They've had a little bit of an extra day to rest. They've made some adjustments here. I think you expect another game where that can go either way in the second half. I think Detroit bounces back to even it up and make it a 2-all series going back to Madison Square Garden Tuesday night.
You can catch him on WFAN as well as PIX there in New York, and also here on VSiN from time to time. It's the Moose, Marc Malusis. Always appreciate it, man.
Tim, my pleasure, man. Have a great day.
There he is, Marc Malusis. Appreciate his insight. And speaking of those NBA playoffs, they are here, folks, and so is the VSiN Killer Sports NBA Playoff Challenge. We've got 15 sharp minds from the world of VSiN and Killer Sports that go head-to-head, making 38 picks each from the start of the playoffs all the way through the NBA Finals. That's 570 NBA playoff picks available to VSiN Pro subscribers. Picks are locked in 1 hour before the first game of each day, so you have free or fresh insights to guide your bets every step of the postseason. And right now, folks, you can get full VSiN Pro access through August 1st for just $59. VSiN.com/subscribe. It's the VSiN Morning Line.